afternoon, good evening, good fourth meal, or whenever you're watching. Welcome to the first episode of the Monthly Rundown. Thanks for tuning in, or however the internet works. If you type in the Monthly Rundown thinking to find period porn, then we're sorry to disappoint, but keep the lube handy, we might surprise you. So, what is the Monthly Rundown? It's a web series dedicated to the issues that matter, like what are those plastic things on your shoelaces? And is the NSA using your dick pics for a Mean Girl style burn book? And we're doing it on the web because television is for sheeple, the radio's for neo-Nazis, and with the state of public education, no one can read a newspaper. On the internet, any asshole who yells loud enough or types in all caps can be heard. My name is Jason Suarez, and today's topic is sanctuary cities. Now, when you think of sanctuary, you might be thinking of this. During the Dark Ages, churches would give sanctuary to criminals provided they turned over a new leaf and skipped town. The only people who couldn't were the ones that believed that Earth rotated around the sun, proving that science and math are just as hated now as they were then. And in the 1980s, churches in the U.S. began a new sanctuary movement to protect the influx of migrants that came seeking refuge from violence in countries like El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. It was controversial then because religious freedom is only okay when infringing on civil liberties. And now the sanctuary movement has emerged again due to the boom of undocumented immigrants fleeing violence in Latin America.
We will stand up and fight for people so that they live their lives out loud in the light of day with dignity and respect.
What a shock, right? The people who tax you to pay for firefighters, police officers, and healthcare also want to provide basic human decency for people who want to come here, work hard, and raise a family. And if being into law is your thing, the major cities' Chiefs Police Association believes that sanctuary cities are good for policing. Undocumented immigrants leave their homes, cross dangerous terrain, and try to make a living in a place where they don't speak the language and can be easily exploited. And they do it all for a shot at a better life. But it's not all sunshine and period porn when they get here. It's like buying tickets to the Rolling Stones farewell tour, only to find the Backstreet Boys on their reunion tour. No, I don't want it that way. With an election coming up, conservatives are saying that the country is in worse shape than ever. We actually have footage of every Republican stump speech since the primaries began.
Well, that's great. That's just fucking great, man. Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty shit now, man.
You finished?
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And so does this.
When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. But they're killing us economically. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Yeah, we know that was an easy one. We've gotten used to the Republican nominee's shit. But the reason he's so successful is because rank-and-file conservatives have been spewing this stuff for a while. Here's what Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa had to say. Enforcing the immigration laws of the United States is not a voluntary or trivial matter. Real lives are at stake. Things cannot continue this way. Oh my God, he thinks we're living the plot of Blade Runner. President Obama has been catching flack for not being tough on immigration, even though over 130,000 undocumented people were deported by ICE. In 2013, over 230,000 were stopped at the border and sent back to their countries of origin. It's sad that a party so needed by diversity is pushing immigrants away, except for these two chuckleheads.
In addition to that, Marco went on Univision in Spanish and said he would not rescind President Obama's illegal executive amnesty on his first day in office. I have promised to rescind every single illegal executive action, including that one. And on the question,
very quickly.
First of all,
I don't know how he knows what I said on Univision because he doesn't speak Spanish. And second of all, the other point that I would make...
Marco, si quieres, díselo ahora mismo, díselo ahora. En español, si quieres.
Do you think Ted Cruz thinks of himself as the redneck Rick Ricardo? You'd think that with two sons of immigrants running for president, there would be some sympathy. But take a look at how Ted Cruz does with immigrants.
You have a Latino problem.
You know, when I ran for Senate in Texas, 40% of Hispanics in Texas voted for me. At the same time, Mitt Romney got just 27% of the Hispanic vote nationwide. Listen, I get...
Only 24% of Latinos would consider voting for you.
Well...
So that means that you might have a Latino problem.
Ted Cruz and I are the same kind of Latino. We look like the offspring of a tub of mayo and the cast of Friends. And the Republicans are all running on something that is keeping their voter base energized, and it's not Monster Energy. It's fear of immigrants. Anti-immigration nationalist groups have been on the rise in the United States ever since President Obama took office. The Southern Poverty Law Center claims that between 2008 and 2009, there were 136 new hate groups, a jump of 80%. There are currently 892 hate groups in the United States. If the U.S. were invested in cultivating clean energy, you could probably run a car on the fear that's being drummed up. But I'm here to tell you, there's no reason to be afraid, unless you're talking about UFOs, ghosts, or your mother-in-law. Sanctuary cities aren't places that immigrants run to after committing crimes. They're not isolated little bat caves where vigilantes can go hide. I'm looking at you, Arizona. Let's keep our focus there, the bleached bones capital of the world. Remember when they passed SB 1070, an especially stringent anti-immigration law that allows law enforcement to stop anyone with reasonable suspicion that they are in the country illegally? Now you guess which one is an illegal immigrant. Psst, it's Superman! While the Papers, Please part of the bill made the most news, it also made E-Verify mandatory and shuttered businesses after their second offense of hiring undocumented workers. This was all in hopes that citizens would take those jobs. According to a report published by the Cato Institute, some 200,000 people fled Arizona faster than Speedy Gonzalez could say, "Epa, epa, stereotypes." Jobs in agriculture and construction went unfilled, and the home price index of Phoenix dropped 50%. The only time your house should lose 50% of its value is if there's a meth lab inside. The U.S. needs immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, and we need sanctuary cities. Not only do they help some of the most vulnerable among us feel safer, they help entire communities. In the criminal justice system, there are people represented by two equally yet important groups: the police, who investigate crimes, and the lawyers who prosecute them. In a 2009 report by the Police Foundation, they acknowledge that there is difficulty of balancing federal and local interests in ways that do not diminish the ability of the police to provide public safety, which depends heavily on public trust. Sanctuary is a tactic that police get behind. Not all cops are Joe Arpaio. And according to Insecure Communities, 70% of undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Chicago, and Houston are afraid to call the police if they were victims of a crime. This isn't a trust fall with your friends where you can let them fall flat. Undocumented immigrants are part of the community, and they won't contact police for fear of deportation, which means real criminals are going free. One city in California, a state where about 20% of the undocumented community lives, is embracing them, and not in that creepy way your uncle does on Thanksgiving.
On August 3rd, Huntington Park Commissioner Johnny Pineda announced the appointments of Julian Zataran and Francisco Medina as the new city commissioners. Now, Zataran will serve the Parks and Recreation Commission, and Medina will join the Health and Education Commission. And both men have something in common: they are undocumented immigrants. Even though the two are undocumented, California state law doesn't prevent them from serving as city commissioners.
That's right. The Huntington Park City Council appointed two undocumented immigrants to the Health, Education, and Parks and Rec Commissions. If the City Council is going to be serving the community, then shouldn't they be serving their entire community? What's the downside of letting people in a community have a voice in the way they're governed? Let's see what some asshole has to say.
In this series, you can see this is the Constitution. This Constitution was written in English. It's established by rules and laws that you have set yourself up above. Now, concerning racism, you had your city manager look out upon an audience, and based upon the color of the skin of the faces, he chose to put us in Spanish. He profiled that audience. He discriminated against me because of the color of my skin. He is a racist, and you, mayor, who allowed it, you are a racist. I'm not going to wear one of those things around my head. I'm not going to be discriminated and treated as a second-class citizen.
Fat, bearded white guy who judges everyone? Holy shit, I think this guy was the inspiration for Krampus. But at least that movie ends after an hour and a half. There's this belief that illegal immigrants are dangerous to the fabric of reality, or worse, the United States. Between 1955 and 2010, 25,000 foreign nationals were arrested for homicide. That doesn't take into account their immigration status, but it does equal 454 a year. Still less than Baltimore. That's about 2%. It seems like America's spirit is to kill the crap out of each other. But that's not what anyone thinks when they think of the American spirit. It's JFK's new frontier, MLK's dream, FDR telling us not to be afraid. A 50% divorce rate. In 2013, Latino males made 57% of white males, and Latinas made 54%. So you can bet it takes a lot longer for undocumented immigrants to reach the dream. And yet still they come. We'd rather have them than those pasty hosers to the north getting already sticky with their syrup. Everything shows that sanctuary cities can be safer than ones that are not. So is it in the American spirit to blame the poorest 3%, or does it make more sense to pass comprehensive immigration reform to keep people from living in the shadows?
The shadow knows.
Thanks for checking out our first episode. We'll be back next month, we swear. You can follow us at The Monthly Rundown for absolutely no breaking news. Here are all the stories you missed this month. I'm Jason Suarez, wishing you a good fourth meal. And here's the period porn that we promised. Guys, do we have that clip? No? It's just me? All right, bye everybody.